well, first of all, it's an inflected language.
The endings.
Yeah,
The
endings.
endings.
For example, in English, actually, English used to be an inflected language. You may be fascinated to know, or you may wonder, like, what am I doing here? But inflected language means, like in English, now we use prepositions. Like, for example, if I say, I go to the store, or I go with you, or I come from Los Angeles. I was actually born in Los Angeles. So I come from Los Angeles, I go to that place, I'm going with you, I am in the room. So those are all what are called case relations, like by using different preparations. So it's different. You say, I go to the house, or I am in the house, right? It's different. You change the preposition, or I'm going with the house, because I have actually a walking, talking house. Just kidding. So inflected languages mean that you don't use those prepositions. Well, you can, for example, in Sanskrit, you can say, let's say in English, you say, I see Krishna. If you say, Krishna, I see, you also understand that. If you say, Krishna, see I, it means Krishna sees you, but you don't know English very well. So the idea is that in English, because we use the prepositions, you put words in a certain order. But in Sanskrit, if you say aham pashe, you say pashe Krishnam, it means I see Krishna. Or you can say Krishnam pashe. Because the M at the end of Krishna means it's the object of the verb. You know that. So I say, for example, gache Krishna, I go to Krishna, or I see Krishna. Just because. By the way, in English is connected to Sanskrit. We still have that in English. There's one word in English which still puts an M at the end of the word when it's the object of the verb. If anyone knows what that word is. What? Very good. Brilliant young man. So yes. Yeah, like for whom the bell tolls. So if you say who goes there, then who is the object? Who goes there? Or he is the person who does something. So who is the subject? But if you say, whom am I speaking with? Or to whom, to whom it may concern, then it's a verb. So Sanskrit's an inflected language. English used to be an inflected language. English used to put endings on the words. Like you say, for example, gache Krishnena, I go with Krishna. Krishnena means with Krishna. Krishnaya means unto Krishna, like you have like Namo Krishnaya or Govindaya and all that.
We have a Krishnaya in the class, that's why they're giggling.
So if you say, for example, Govindaya, it means unto Govinda, or Krishna unto Krishna. Or if you say Krishna, it means from Krishna, and Krishnasya means of Krishna. Like you say, that's Krishna's house, you would say Tad Krishnasya Griham. That is the house of Krishna. Krishnasya, and Krishna means in Krishna. For example, you could say in Sanskrit, a simple word, you could say, Sarvam Jagat Krishna. The whole universe is in Krishna. And then there's Hey Krishna. Like if you're talking to Krishna, you would just say Krishna. Radhe, by the way, Radhe is just the vocative form of Radha. Radha is the name, of course, is Radha. And then if you're talking to her directly, so in Sanskrit, if you say Radhe, then she knows that you're talking to her. Like you're directly speaking to her. That's what Radhe is.
So when a little thing when
how did I get into all that?
We were trying to name our classroom Krishna Sharana. I asked Rana Maharaj if that would be the proper way to construct it to mean like taking shelter of Krishna.
Yes,
Krishna
yes.
So that's our classroom saying Krishna Sharana. So
Krishna Sharana.
For it. Yeah.
So any questions on Sanskrit?
So they should study it because.
Well, yeah, that's right. Why study Sanskrit? If you, and I hope you do, if you plan sometime in your life to help other people to understand Krishna, in other words, if you have a sense of generosity, a sense of kindness or charity, and you would like to help other people to understand Krishna, then at least intelligent people, educated people, I mean, they'll be happy to hear from you, but if you know the original language, then they'll take you much more seriously. for example, if I meet someone who's a Christian and he says the Bible says this and the Bible says that, it's like, okay. But because there's so many misinterpretations of the Bible, and I've actually studied it like in the university, so I know a lot about early Christian history, and so they may say this or that, and there's a good chance I know a little more than they do about it. But if, let's say I meet a Christian, and that Christian happens to know what is called New Testament Greek. The New Testament, the Old Testament was just the Hebrew Bible, the Jewish Bible, and then after Jesus came, they wrote down these 4 little biographies of Jesus, which are called the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And then Paul, that's a whole story how Paul took over the church and why he's in the New Testament so much. But anyway, so they wrote it in Greek, even though Jesus never spoke Greek. Jesus spoke a language called Aramaic, which is sort of a type of Hebrew. So why did they write that? Does anyone know why they wrote the New Testament in Greek when they finally got around to writing it? Because that was English back then. Back then, in the world that people cared about, so to speak, the modern world, which was Greece, and then of course Rome was the major power back then. And so Greek, if you wanted to travel around the world, it's like, English, you can go around the world and find someone that understands you and tell you where the bathroom is, which is often the most important question when you're traveling. So Greek was the language that you would speak. So Greek was English back then. That's why they wrote the New Testament in Greek. So if you meet someone that's a Christian, or say someone wants to tell you about Judaism and they actually understand the Hebrew of the Old Testament, or someone's a Buddhist, so when someone knows the language of what they're trying to teach, you take them more seriously. Because if I don't know Sanskrit, I'm taking someone else's word for what it means. Now, in this case, we trust Prabhupada. We accept him as a pure devotee, so we're not worried about how Prabhupada translates the Bhagavatam or the Gita. But when you're speaking to people, they may say, well, you don't really know it. You just accepted on faith that this book says this and this book says that. You don't really know what the original text says. And then you'd have to say, well, but I believe that Prabhupada. Now, I know Sanskrit, and I know that Prabhupada translated it well, so I don't have, but still, if someone challenges me, I can tell them what the original words say and exactly what they mean. And so I can defend our point of view. So if you have any intention of teaching Krishna consciousness to this poor, miserable world that just elected a narcissistic sociopath as the president of the United States. So if you have any interest in actually helping other people, if you know at least a little Sanskrit, people will just take you much more seriously for the rest of your life. And it's nice to be taken seriously.
Okay, most of our other questions are scientific in nature, except for
I am ready.
one. Okay, so
you still didn't tell me what prizes I can win.
hip hip hooray! No. Okay, so what did we say? The devolving. Okay, so they're learning about evolutionary theory in science, and it seems like it started small and that evolved into greater,
more
linear,
complex.
More complex.
Right.
But then they feel like the Yuga cycle, Satya Yuga, starts most complex and then devolves into Kali Yuga, and that there's a cyclical nature of the Vedic knowledge, and there's a linear nature of the scientific world outside of the Vedic knowledge. And how do you understand both?
How do we reconcile those two things?
And how do they both make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, how is it from, you go Satya to Kali and then the other?
Well, first of all, going from Satya Yuga to Kali Yuga is not necessarily biological devolution. In other words, it's not necessarily that basic human biology or basic human anatomy changed over the yugas. People just became a lot more creepy. But
they also got shorter and things like that, right? Sorry, that's our bell.
Oh, it's like Indian style. Is that Badahari?
Yeah.
An old friend Badahari. We were friends ever way back, like over 30 years ago. I was in Boonham Beach with him. Anyway, so as far as people getting shorter and stuff like that.
It's not. We don't know what's going on.
It's probably hostile aliens trying to stop the Sankirtan movement. They've infiltrated the computer. So Very much like that.
Yeah.
As far as people getting shorter and people used to be really big and Krishna was like 11 feet tall or something, whatever they say, that's not really in Shastra so much. Okay, can I be honest with you? Or want to know the truth?
Be honest.
Okay, put another coin in the meter. There's a lot of things that are said in the Hare Krishna movement which are not exactly that way. I mean, the basic things are true, like you're not your body, Krishna is God, Prabhupada is Krishna's representative, you should serve Krishna, all that stuff is right there in the Bhagavad Gita. But things like people used to be, what the Bhagavatam does say about Kali Yuga, it says, what does it say? Bhotikanam cha bhavanam shakti hrasam cha tatritam. That all material things, their power, they lose their power in this age. Shakti hrasam, that their power diminishes. So you could say, well, that means they get shorter, but that's kind of interpretation of what it means.
They saw that people, when he came out of the cave, he saw that people had become shorter.
We have to look at Sanskrit to see what it says. If anyone has the Bhagavatam here, has that verse? What's it? See, that's an example where I like to look at the Sanskrit and see what it actually says. But still, as far as evolution.
So you're saying it's a devolution in consciousness is what happens over
Yeah.
the ages.
As far as evolution, here's the fact. What scientists actually know is that the tendency is that if you look at the older bones are, they talk about bones a lot. They're fossils. They're called, really old bones are called fossils. So the older they are, they tend to be more simple. And the younger they are, tend to be more complex. And of course, as Judith Karma has pointed out, there are a lot of exceptions to that rule, but that's what it tends to be. Now, how it got there, they haven't got the slightest idea. They pretend they know, but that's not science. Because the essence of science is actually the controlled experiment. You have to observe things. And so there's not one scientist in history that watched things evolve. Oops, here it comes. It's a pig coming out of a crocodile. I mean, no one ever did that. So no one ever saw evolution. And if you say, well, even if species do get more complex, it's because Krishna did it. Krishna actually made it happen. How will science refute that? I'm actually going to give a talk on that. Basically what happened, when you talk to scientists, a lot of what they say is real science. A lot of what they say is just nonsense. They actually don't know what they're talking about. For example, just yesterday, preparing for my talk, I watched this public, what is it called? PBS? Public Broadcasting. Yeah. It was this educational thing on quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And so this person, hey, Nimai, welcome back to the class. So what this guy said, they had some slick scientist, actually his brother's a devotee. He was on this TV show, and he said that actually all of us are just atoms. We're all just atoms and subatomic particles. And I thought, no, I'm not, you idiot. I mean, I'm not. Speak for yourself. You want to be an atom, be my guest. But, because if you think about it, there's actually billions and billions of atoms in your body. So what does it mean? What does it even mean to say that I'm billions and billions of little electrical charges? Like protons, neutrons, proton, positive charge, neutron, neutral, electrons, negative charge. What does it even mean? If I say to you that actually you are, like, let's say we're walking on the beach, and I say, actually, you are billions of little grains of sand. I mean, what does that mean? Maybe it's just bad poetry, but what does it mean scientifically? What does it mean to say that you're one person, you are yourself, you're conscious, you are one person, you're a unique person, and consciousness is not a material object. You can't say consciousness, you can't say what color it is, you can't say how much it weighs. It's consciousness. So what does it mean to say that you, a conscious person, are billions of little subatomic particles? It's just nonsense, just babbling. And that's not science. Because science can't tell you that, for example, consciousness is material. How can a scientist say that? There's nothing in science. Anyway, I don't want to get into too much of this. I'm going to be talking about this. But there's physics and metaphysics. These terms come from Aristotle. Physics means just the physical world, normal science, studying the world you can touch and taste and hear and all that, the physical world. Meta, in Greek, meta means beyond, what is beyond. So metaphysics means what is beyond the physical world. I'll give you an example. The Declaration of Independence, the DOI, by Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was actually, he's a really smart guy. Actually, President Kennedy once said, he once had all these Nobel laureates for dinner at the White House. He said, this is the greatest gathering of intelligence for a White House dinner since Thomas Jefferson ate dinner alone. And so if you look at the Declaration of Independence, it starts out with a technical philosophical claim. It says that we hold these, first it starts out when in the course of human events, like we're doing this because the King of England is really being a jerk. So that's just, the beginning. It's in a very nice way said that. So then Jefferson said, we hold these truths to be self-evident. You know the Declaration of Independence? Now what is self-evident? Self-evident is a technical philosophical term. Because Aristotle pointed this out actually, and Lord Chaitanya also used the same term, by the way, in his debates with Prakashananda and Sarvabhauma. The idea is, if you claim something is true, you can be pushed, logically, into what is called an infinite regress of proofs. Regress means going backwards. The opposite of regress is progress. Progress means going, gress is go. So progress means going forward. By the way, PRO is just Sanskrit pra, like pravartate. Anyway, so progress means going forward, regress means going backwards. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's say you claim that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Right? You all believe it? Please tell me you believe that. So water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Now someone could say, I don't believe it, prove it. Okay, so you put a pot of water on the stove, you put a thermometer in the pot, and at 100 degrees Celsius, the water boils. But someone can say, I don't believe that's pure water. I think you put some chemicals in the water to change the temperature at which it boils. So you say, okay, here's some chemicals that'll prove this pure water. Someone could say, well, I don't believe that's real mercury in the thermometer. So you have to test the mercury. Then someone could say, well, I don't believe that those are real water testing chemicals. So in other words, you just keep going backwards. You say something is true, someone says prove it, you give the proof, they say prove that, you prove that, so you just keep going backwards forever. So Aristotle said this. Aristotle said that you can be pushed in argument, you can be pushed into an infinite regress, going backwards forever, trying to prove things. And so how do you escape that infinite regress of proofs? How do you escape that? What Aristotle said, same thing Lord Chaitanya said, is that you have to come up with something which proves itself. Because if something proves itself, you don't bring something else to prove it. It proves itself. An example of that is the sun. As they say, you can't hold a candle to the sun. If someone says, where's the sun? You can't, shine a flashlight on the sun, because the sun is the brightest light. So if someone says, I don't see the sun in the sky, and in fact, it's a clear day, what that means is that person is somehow visually defective. If the sun is in the sky and everybody can see it, and someone says, I don't see the sun, then, you need a doctor. So in the same way, here's an example of you cannot do material science unless you claim that something is self-evident. You cannot just do science. You first have to claim. Of course, scientists never take philosophy classes, so they don't know. They wouldn't know philosophy if they tripped over it. But you get a PhD in biology or physics, you don't have to take philosophy classes. So, for example, what if someone says, as Descartes, there was a French philosopher, scientist, really smart guy. In fact, the stuff he came up with still everybody uses for all kinds of scientific processes. He invented like the graph. He's a really smart guy, 1600s, French.
Yeah.
What?
I think before I am. Is that Descartes?
Yeah, cogito ergo sum, I think. Anyway, he did all kinds of stuff. But he, what was I just going to say now? Oh, yes. He said, what if I doubt everything? What if I sit down to meditate this book. He wrote a little book called The Meditations. What if I sit down to meditate, and what if everything I think is true isn't true? What if everything I think is illusion? And so the first thing he came up with is, he said, it's very famous, cogito ergo sum, which in Latin means I think, therefore I am. I can't doubt that I exist, because if I doubt that I exist, how could I doubt myself if I don't exist? The only way I could doubt is if I exist. So the first thing he said was, I have absolute evidence that I exist. No one can say I don't exist, because even if I'm doubting, that proves I exist. But then he said, what if there's an evil demon? What if there's, well, actually that's redundant. All demons are evil. There are no good demons. But anyway, what if there's, let's say, like some evil genius or powerful person that actually has you in a laboratory right now and is making you think that you're in the classroom seeing the world? And the way they do it, modern philosophers, they talk about the brain in a vat. You know, a vat is like witches where they mix up all their stuff. In other words, what if right now you're a brain somewhere else, and someone's manipulating you, the brain, and making you think that you're in the Hare Krishna movement or something. So, or you're in Alachua, Florida. How do you prove that there's a real world outside your own mind? So that was a question that was raised. So, did you want to answer that question? No? Oh, okay. I'm sorry, you're just yawning. Yeah. Go ahead. Yawn away. I just thought maybe you wanted to answer the question. So ultimately, a scientist can't prove that there's a real world. Because you could say, for example, I could hold this up and say, look, this is a real flower garland. That proves there's a real world. That's called circular reasoning. It's a logical fallacy. Circular reasoning means that, let's say you're giving arguments for something. Like the typical thing is, all men are mortal. Women live forever, I guess. But anyway, that's what they say. Let's say all human beings are mortal. We'll get rid of the chauvinist version of it. So if we say all human beings are mortal, that means all human beings die. And the typical example is Socrates is a man, he's immortal. Therefore, Socrates will die. Or you could substitute anyone else. Now that's the logic. If it's true that all men are mortal, and if it's true that Socrates is a man, then it must be the case that Socrates will die. There's no way Socrates is not going to die.
Transitive property. If A and B, B and C.
Yeah. But now what if you say, if a scientist, thank you. It's good. If a scientist holds up a garland and says, I can prove there's a real world. Look, this is a real garland. You can touch it. You can see it. But that's called circular reasoning, because this is a real garland only if there's a real world outside your mind. And so you can't give this as evidence there's a real world, because the reality of this garland depends on the reality of the world, and the reality of the world depends on the reality of the garland. It's like two people drowning, just holding on to each other, and they both go down. Because you're just giving something as proof of itself, which means you didn't actually give an argument. So therefore, on what grounds can a scientist say there's a real world outside of my mind, and I'm studying and measuring a real world? So the scientist would have to say that it's self-evident. That's what he would have to say, or she. That it's self-evident that the nature of my experience, when I wake up in the morning and I look out at the world, the experience I'm having is such that it proves itself to me. For example, let's say you're sleeping and dreaming, and then you wake up. How do you know that when you wake up, that's the real world? What if you were in the real world dreaming, and then you woke up, and that's the dream? I mean, I'm
Pinch yourself.
blow your mind. So, what she said?
He said, pinch yourself.
Pinch yourself? Yeah, but what if you can also pinch yourself in a dream?
It doesn't actually work.
What's that?
What did you say, Grandma?
It doesn't actually work.
To pinch
Like-
yourself in a dream?
Yeah. You pull your finger. In a dream,
It's like if you die.
In a dream, it stretches.
What?
So you pull your finger, but in a dream it stretches.
It stretches,
it
or
does, when is you
yeah, or nothing.
I-
Okay, well, anyway, we're gonna move on here. The point is, when you're dreaming, you do not think you're dreaming. Sometimes, of course, you dream that you wake up, but it's just another dream. It's just part 2 of your dream. So the point is that when you're dreaming, you are completely convinced that's reality. But now when you wake up and you say to yourself, or you realize, I was dreaming. Now, what basis do you make that conclusion? Why do you decide that you just woke up from a dream? I'll give you the answer if you like, because that's what I'm paid for. Because when you wake up, you compare the quality of those experiences, the nature of that experience. And it is self-evident to you, it proves itself to you that my waking state is more real than when I was dreaming. So what I'm saying is, this is called, by the way, in Western philosophy, it's called foundationalism, which means that and this is a type of epistemology. Episteme in Greek means knowledge. So there's different branches of philosophy. Like there's political philosophy. What is the best way for human beings to govern themselves or to be governed? Or there's ethical philosophy. What is moral and what is immoral? Or there's ontology, which means that what things really exist and what is the nature of real things? How do they exist? In Sanskrit, that's called tattva, by the way, like Vishnu tattva, Jiva tattva. And another branch of philosophy is epistemology, which is how do you know you know? Like, let's say sometimes you'll meet people, even in the Hare Krishna movement, which is, well, shouldn't surprise us, that think the earth is flat.
That's one of our questions. What do you think about flat earth theory?
I think people that think the earth is flat kind of, the only really flat thing I think is kind of their head, but no. I've been taking too many airplane flights to believe it. So anyway, so epistemology means if someone claims, I know something, it's not my opinion, I actually know it. How do we judge that? Under what circumstances, under what conditions are you justified in saying that you know something, that it's not just your opinion? And when is it just your opinion? What has to be true for you to say that you really know something? So the point is there's different ways to get knowledge, but it has to have a foundation. Ultimately, there has to be something which proves itself to you like there's a real world. Otherwise, you'll be pushed into an infinite regress of proofs. Now, here's the point about Krishna consciousness. Now we get to the spiritual part of our program. That's what I'm paid for. So it's an honest job, right? An honest way to make a living, something else. So the idea is that when we chant Hare Krishna, when we read Bhagavad Gita, or when we have an experience of Krishna, that experience proves itself to us. I mean, for someone that really understands what we're doing. So my experience of Krishna is just as real to me as my experience that there's a real world outside of myself. Now, what if someone does know about Krishna? Even if you don't believe in God, you still have to admit that you live in a bidimensional universe, which means there's a physical dimension, but there's a metaphysical. I'll prove it to you. In America, Thomas Jefferson said, it's a self-evident truth that we're created equal. Now, the fact is, you could give everyone in this room, or just everyone in Florida or on Earth, any imaginable kind of test, and it will show we're not equal. All of empirical science, like all of it, shows that we're not equal. We can't all run just as fast. We're not all equally artistic. We don't all have the same emotional IQ, mathematical intelligence. We're just not equal. And so every conceivable, every imaginable scientific test will show that we're not equal. And yet, in establishing a government in America and now all over the world, all science is rejected. people that founded this country rejected all empirical science and decided there is a metaphysical fact which actually is more important than all the science in the world. And that metaphysical fact is that we're equal. So if someone says we're all equal, people should be treated equally, I have a simple question. How do you know that? You cannot prove scientifically that we're equal. So how do you know we're equal? How do you know that everyone should have equal rights? Why shouldn't rich people get 100 votes and poor people maybe 1 or none? Well, it's kind of like that now. But anyway, so, but how can you prove we're equal? Or here's another example. You've heard of Darwin, right? Yeah, he's one of my good buddies, Charles Darwin. So in 1859, he published The Origin of Species. Now, it was such a sensation. It was like this blockbuster that people started saying, well, wait a second. If Darwin's right, and it's really survival of the fittest, maybe we should have social Darwinism. In other words, if poor people starve to death, maybe that's a good thing. Because if they're poor, they're probably a little stupid. And, they're just going to drag down our gene pool. So it's probably better that poor people starve. Or if, let's say, or if we conquer these other people, that means we're tougher, we're stronger, we're just better specimens. And so when we eliminate the weaker, and it's like the law of the jungle, survival of the fittest, might makes right, we're just helping nature to progress. Because that's what, that's what evolution's all about. It's about stronger creatures, smarter creatures, killing dumber creatures and weaker creatures, or the dumb and the weak, or those that can't adapt because of climate change or whatever, they just die out. Now, there was one guy in Europe who really liked Darwin. And he thought, I love this stuff, and I want to carry out a project of social Darwinism, which means helping nature to progress by helping the better, the smarter, the stronger human beings to survive. And so he consciously said, I'm going to carry out a project of social Darwinism. And he did. Well, he created a project, and that person's name, you probably heard of him, is Adolf Hitler. So when Adolf Hitler started his genocide, when he started, the first time in history, sort of creating factories, murder factories, where you don't just kill people the old-fashioned way with a sword or a knife, or you strangle them, or, all that fun old-fashioned stuff. But now you actually create factories, like industrial killing factories. And you commit genocide. You actually try to kill millions of people. And Hitler believed that he was just following Darwin. So now, if you say, or someone is an atheist, let's say, and it says that nothing is real except matter, all that really exists is just dead matter, then you have no philosophical right to say that Hitler was bad or he did something bad. You have nothing to say to Hitler or Mao Zedong. Actually, some people think it's really cool to be a leftist or a Marxist or communist. They don't mention one fact, that actually people who claim to be Marxists and communists killed about 20 times more people than Hitler. So the next time you meet someone that thinks it's like really cool or sexy to be a Marxist or something, they killed about 20 times more people than Hitler. Nice people. So like Mao Zedong, Stalin, Castro actually in Cuba killed a lot of people. The Khmer Rouge in Cambodia that killed like 20% of the whole country. I mean, imagine, it'd be like if someone in America killed about 70 million people. I mean, percentages. Mathematically, it would be like if someone killed 70 million people in this country. That's what they did in Cambodia. They were communists. So, it's a great thing, Marxism. But the point is, here's a simple question you can ask people. Do you believe that it's morally wrong to torture and kill innocent people? Now, if you say that, yes, it's wrong to do that, that means you live in a bidimensional universe. Because there's no scientific way to show that it's wrong. Wrongness and rightness are not physical objects. Material science cannot talk about morality. It cannot talk about values like right, wrong, equality. Those are not physical things. Science has nothing to say about them. So if you think that anything is really bad, like torturing and killing babies or something, if you think that's bad, it means that you live in a bidimensional universe in which there are real physical things and real metaphysical things. So now you have to ask yourself the question, if I live in a universe that clearly has two dimensions, the physical and the metaphysical, how could that be the case? How could there be a universe in which there are real things that are not material? Where do they come from? And how could they exist at all? And you end up getting to God. So that I'm going to talk about these things. I mean,
So the science, they don't have to contradict each other. They can be talking about
absolutely. And they used to. If you look at the history of the Western world, science, like for Aristotle and for Descartes and for Newton, Newton was very religious. Newton thought he was serving God by showing how the universe, because the more logical the universe is, the more obvious it is that someone built it. Because the universe ultimately isn't stupid. There's a lot of stupid people in it. But the universe itself it's a work of infinite genius in terms of engineering. So if you look at the history of science, most of the great scientists in history believed in God and believed that they were serving God by doing science. Copernicus, for example, the Copernican Revolution, Copernicus, nice Polish gentleman, who was the first one that figured out that that the earth goes around the sun. That's called heliocentric. Helios in Greek is the sun. So heliocentric means that the sun is the center. And the other idea is geocentric. We want to talk about flat earthers. They're like, give them more persona. So, but in terms of, so everyone thought all the planets, the sun, go around the earth. The earth is the center of the universe. Now, one of the reasons that Copernicus was interested in figuring out what's really going on up there is because he thought we can do better astrology that way. In other words, Copernicus wasn't like a modern scientist, atheist, sort of like nitwit. Copernicus actually, and the church actually asked him to figure it out because they couldn't calculate when like Christmas was or Easter because they didn't have an accurate reading. They went by. But most of the great scientists in history believed in God. Now, another thing I'm talking about very briefly is the scientists who said, only we know objective truth, we can explain everything. They ended up with pie in their face. And that pi is quantum pi, it's quantum mechanics. Do I have time for that?
Yes.
Okay. Actually, I may not have time. I'm supposed to. Okay, 5 more minutes. You've heard of quantum mechanics?
Yes.
Quantum physics? I'll explain what happened. Newtonian physics. Newton is like things you can see, like a ball falls at a certain speed, or the earth goes around, and so on. Quantum mechanics studies things that are smaller than atoms. Protons, neutrons, electrons. So that's called subatomic. It's smaller than atoms. And so what they found is that, and that's where electronics comes from. It comes from quantum mechanics because electronic, it means just stuff you figure out by studying electrons, right? Electronic. So what they found is very quickly, because I got to run, and I got a free lunch today. That's, you want free lunch? Take Senios. So the idea is that when you look at, in quantum mechanics, when you look at electrons, when you look at them, they change their behavior. And when you don't look at them, they act a different way. It's like, say you're like doing all kinds of crazy things and suddenly your mother walks in. And so sometimes you have to slightly modify your behavior. So, yeah, so the point is when we look, electrons tend to act like waves. I mean, I don't have time to go in, but they tend to act like energy, like a wave. You think of like an ocean wave. If there's an ocean wave, let's say, that comes to 2 little tunnels in the sand, and let's say the tunnel's big enough so the water's not going to break it. So there's a flood, and the water goes through 2 parallel tunnels. So the water's going to divide. It's going to go through those 2 tunnels, and then once it gets to the other side, the water's all going to merge and become just a big wave again. Whereas if you throw a ball through the tunnel, it just goes to the tunnel. But a wave is different. So waves behave differently than particles or like balls. They just behave differently. So what happens is that when scientists study electrons, they act like particles. But when they're not looking, they act like waves. And then as soon as you look again, they like, oh, no, I'm just a particle. Not only that, they found that you can have like a neutron. You can have these tiny little super tiny particles, subatomic particles, and they can be like 10 miles apart and they talk to each other. Because particles, these subatomic particles have spin. And when two particles, like, I don't know, get married, become like Grihasta subatomic particles or something. Anyway, when two particles, when they combine, they always spin in opposite directions. That's how they combine. It's like negative, positive, and they bind together. Now you can separate these particles, and they can be literally, and these are like, I mean, infinitesimal. They can be 10 miles apart, but if you make one of them spin a different way, the other one will immediately also spin a different way. Actually, Einstein called this spooky action at a distance. And so they can't figure out why this happens. It's called quantum mechanics because let's say I'm walking to the door, which you'll actually see me do just in a minute. Let's say, for example, I walk to the door. There's no way I can get to the door without passing through the space between me and the door. I have to do that. That's not what electrons do. It's called quantum mechanics because a quantum is a unit of a quantity. It's a certain quantity. So a specific quantity is called a quantum. Now what happens with electrons is that they orbit. It's like they orbit the nucleus of an atom, but and they go up and down depending on how much energy they have. When they lose some energy, they go down to a smaller orbit, and the energy they lose, you actually see it as light. That's actually why things glow, because the electrons are losing energy, and the energy is coming out as light. So anyway,
Electricity.
Yeah, electricity. Actually, from electricity. Yeah. And so what happens is that when an electron goes to a different orbit, it doesn't pass through the space. It doesn't pass through the space between the two orbits. It's just here, and then it's there. And it doesn't pass through the two spaces. The reason we know that is because normally when you look at light, and you put light and put it in a prism, you see a whole spectrum of light where let's say the red light gradually turns into a different color light. You get a spectrum of gradual colors. But when you look at light coming out of atoms, what happens is you just get bars of color. And those are the different orbits where the light comes out of, because electrons do not go from point A to point B. They're at point A and then they're at point B. They don't go between. And so how do they actually get there? How do electrons talk to each other when they're 10 miles apart? And one knows exactly what the other one is doing. And there's all kinds of stuff like this. And they can't figure it out. Why is it that a bunch of electrons will act like a wave, and they test this by making them go through slits and everything, but then as soon as you look at it, it acts like a particle. And when you look away, it becomes a wave again. And even when they put detectors, even if they put cameras, there's no human person, the electrons know someone's watching them, even if the person watching them is just going to watch them 5 hours later on a film. The fact that you're filming, that you're watching the electrons, they know someone's watching. Even if it's just a camera, they know there's a camera there. Now, so scientists, they start to talk like, it's almost like a Harry Potter movie. They start saying like, wow, that's weird, that's strange, that's mysterious. And so science was supposed to explain everything. So quantum mechanics, they just hit this brick wall. So much so that 100 years ago, and this takes a long time to trickle down to the ordinary people on the street. 100 years ago, the greatest quantum physicist in the world said, we do not know what's really going on down there. We don't know what it really looks like. We actually don't know. All we can say is we've come up with equations, and when you use these equations, we can build really cool electronic devices, and we can do experiments. So the equations work, but we have no idea what it really looks like. We have no idea what's really down there. And so they gave up what's called in philosophy correspondence. That when I say atom, electron, this and that, what I say corresponds to what's really there. Like if I say, for example, if I say temple room at ISKCON New Raman Rady, there's a temple room and it's this color and this size, you can go look at the temple room and you'll see that it corresponds to what I said. My words correspond objectively to what's actually there. But when you get to quantum mechanics, which they don't know what the hell's going on. They really don't know. And they gave up trying. In fact, there's a scientist named Heisenberg who read Vedanta Sutra and really liked it. It's called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. He showed mathematically that the more you know about where an electron is, where its location, the less you know about how fast it's moving. And the more you know about its velocity, the less you know where it is, and you just can't fix it. You can't fix it. So they've actually proven mathematically that basically science hit a brick wall, and they just can't figure out what's really down there. So that should make them humble. And also, the worst thing of all for them, it really looks like mind is controlling matter. And science grew and took over by saying no more spookiness, no more magic. We're gonna tell you what's really there. Consciousness, there's no mind over matter. That's just a cheap circus act. So anyway, Hare Krishna. So I have to run because that's what I do as sannyasi. I go for free lunches. But so the point is that this idea of science knows everything. No, actually they don't. They've hit a brick wall, and they actually haven't got the slightest idea how this stuff is going on at that level.
But it doesn't negate that they know some things.
They know a
how
lot.
They work, how things work.
No, they know a lot. Science is great. They just need to be a little more humble and admit. For example, if you just say the only real knowledge comes from science, you cannot say Hitler did anything wrong. You cannot say that unless you're a philosophical hypocrite. If you are a materialist, you cannot say it's wrong to kill innocent people. You just can't say that because you're contradicting yourself. If there's nothing except matter, there's no justice, there's no mercy, there's no equality, there's no good or evil. Those aren't material things. Those are values. Values are metaphysical. So we live in a bi-dimensional universe because we know that certain things are really wrong as clearly as we know there's a real world outside our mind. And therefore the epistemological structure, the way we conclude that some things are right or wrong or Krishna's God, turns out to be the same method of getting knowledge that tells us there's a real world. So anyway, thank you all. Hare Krishna. See you guys later. See you tomorrow. I have to say, is everyone on Facebook? You want to say hello to all my cult followers? Gurukul Neuron Rating.
So, Joshua, you had a lot more questions, right?
Oh.